So I have to get my PowerPoint on,
Okay.
but I can't hear it.
We're trying to minimize it.
No, I want to hear her.
Oh,
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Tanae,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I had some difficulty getting this up because for some reason I couldn't connect. So I have a student who was helping me out, but I think we're on. So Chrissy, before we begin, should I now open up the PowerPoint from my, or not yet?
Yeah, you can go ahead and open it now, but don't share the screen yet until after your part comes.
Okay, so, but I have to go into share to open it, right?
No, you just open the PowerPoint like normal.
Okay, now I don't know how to get back on the screen.
Oh, you can just minimize it. There you go.
Okay, I think I have it.
So you click PowerPoint.
Okay. All right.
All right, let's go ahead and begin. We'll let Tanae kind of start us off today.
Excellent. Let's share our screen. There we go. All right. We're coming. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3 o'clock here and rainy. We are slowly but surely, there's a little delay. There we are. And hopefully everyone can see that. Good afternoon. This is Attorney Tanae Mcdonald. We are so happy to have all of you on the line. This will be time well spent. And I am grateful that CLEO has asked me to be a part of the 1L Bar Readiness Program. So pat yourselves on the back for doing this work. We'll talk about further about going the extra mile and doing all that you can to make sure you're successful, not only in law school, but on through the bar exam and well into the practice. So I am joined by 2 colleagues who I will allow to introduce themselves when it's their turn. But right now, I'd like for you to just all take a deep breath, maybe inhaling for 2 or 3 seconds, and then exhaling as long as you can to push out every bit of stale air out of your body. That process of inhaling and exhaling slowly will serve you well when you get into a sticky situation on an exam, on the bar exam, and in the practice. So get into the habit of breathing yourself down to the point where you can remain calm and level-headed. And I'm sure in that calmness and stillness, you will find exactly what you need to get where you need to go. I will tell you more about myself as we go through the process, but let's get started. And I'll start by telling you what CLEO did for me. Some years ago, about 12 years ago, I started law school and I found CLEO in a law school forum. I had never heard of CLEO before, and I'm so glad that I found out about them. I lived in the North, but moved to the South to go to law school, and I was a non-traditional student, meaning that I was old. It was a nice way of calling me old. But I was shocked that when I got to law school, I was the only person of color in my class. And so CLEO served as that place where I could come together and commune with other students of color. And they have really, those people that I've met then, remain my friends through law school, through 2 bar exams, and well into the practice. So CLEO was a saving grace for me emotionally. And they also gave me tools and resources ahead of when I needed them. And I really needed that as a non-traditional. I already felt like I had a steep learning curve. And so just getting information a little bit ahead of when I needed it really served me well. So I'm so grateful that CLEO is still doing the work of getting students of color into law school, making sure they have the tools to stay in law school, and now really focusing efforts to make sure that you pass the bar exam on the first attempt. So my purpose here is for each and every one under the sound of my voice to be inspired. Inspiration is simply the process of being mentally stimulated to want to do something different or want to do something creative. And so in the 30 minutes I've been given, I want to inspire you to number one, be grateful for where you are, because where you're sitting right now is just a dream for many, many people around you, and you are the one who bit the bullet and is getting it done. And I want to inspire you to implement some strategies starting today that will help improve your law school outcomes, but more importantly, will get you to the exam and a passage on that bar exam first time out. So I'm going to take you on a little journey, starting with where you are, what you can be doing now for what is to come. So let's get started. You are on a journey. You've already started. It actually started when you decided to sit for the LSAT. And everything that you do now is either going to get you closer to your goal or it's going to set you back. And so what you want to do now is stay connected to people who are on the journey with you, who are moving in the right direction, who esteem you to take positive steps forward, and to steer clear of situations and people that your progress. So that's key number one, is you're already on the journey. And this is the slide I like to use with law students as I travel to different law schools, because it's just a fun way to talk about matter. Matter, different forms of matter are essential for our existence, but I always bring it home to remind you that you matter. Where you spend your time, your attention, your dreams. For me, law school was a dream. So it was that dream that fueled me on the low days. So your dreams matter. Your presence, where you decide to show up, the words that you use, how you spend your time, and your mind really matters. Essentially, everything that you do from this moment forward matters in you getting to the practice of law. So keep that in mind, because what you're doing now, the 1L year, is all about gathering essential pieces. Because the bar exam is a test of everything that you were supposed to have learned and mastered the first 3 semesters of law school. So the 1L year is gathering pieces. The 2L and 3L year is putting those pieces all together, because the goal for you is when you start studying for the bar exam, your position is you've got the full picture. You gather the pieces, you put them together, and now you have the full puzzle all put together. Because bar review is exactly that. It should be a review. It should not be 12 weeks where you are trying to learn concepts for the first time. It's a review. So to be in the best position for that review is to gather every piece that you can now, spend the 2 and 3L year putting it all together so that you can start your position strong. So how do you master the bar exam during law school? I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I know some of you are just trying to get through the 1L year, but if you can dial in on the importance of this semester and the previous semester, it will make bar review a lot easier for you. I start off with Thurgood Marshall. It's Black History Month, and I wanted to include some slides of how it connects with me. Thurgood Marshall graduated from my undergrad alma mater, Lincoln University, and of course, he was a Supreme Court Justice. So I love Thurgood Marshall. He's also a Baltimore homeboy. I'm from Baltimore, so that's why he's included in this presentation. So the first step is to really put the 1L year into the proper perspective. Yes, it was full of anxiety for me. I went into law school, as a lot of students do, used to being number 1 in your class throughout school and standing out because of that. And then you get to law school and you're surrounded by other people, other students who are used to being number 1. To move from a big fish in a small pond, and then law school, you can feel like a guppy in the ocean. And that can bring its own high level of anxiety. But just to put that 1L year and what you're experiencing right now into perspective during Black History Month is to talk a little bit about Dorothy Counts. I live in Charlotte now. Dorothy Counts is a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had the pleasure of meeting her. She desegregated Harding High School here in North Carolina, along with a litany of other students across the country that did the same thing. This was a picture taken of her the first day of her freshman year of high school. And she talked to us about how she felt, what she experienced, the fear, the anxiety, just not knowing how it was all going to work out. But she dug deep and she stuck with it. And to talk to her today, she's the most pleasant, the most humble person that you can meet. And so I thought it was good for me to share my experience meeting with Ms. Counts with you. That first year can be a kick in the gut. But I think that no matter what you experienced last semester or what you have yet to experience in this semester, I would submit to you it pales in comparison to what people of color in this country have had to deal with just to get an education. And for all that they went through, very few of them got to the place where you are today. So hopefully just thinking about what others have gone through can put what you're experiencing into perspective, and it will remind you that it will not break you, that this is an opportunity that people only dream of, and you're sitting here and you're doing it. Step one in this process of mastering the bar exam during law school is really to take a cold, hard look at yourself as a student. And you want to ask yourself some serious questions, and you want to be honest with yourself about those answers. So question number one would be like, when are your peak brain hours? For me, I knew that my brain shut off at 10 p.m. So for me to try to pull an all-nighter was a complete waste of time. I also knew that in the morning hours, that's when I was really working on all cylinders. And so ask yourself those questions and work where you are optimal. Number two, you've probably already reached a point where you have decided whether you're using outlines or note cards in law school. I submit, I'm going to ask you to commit to one, the one that is most effective for you. Because when you get to bar study, you want to just continue to do what has already been proven to work for you. So that's also what the 1L year is all about. It is figuring out what works well for you to solidify these concepts, these rules of law in your brain, and the ability to get them out on paper. And what works for you now will continue to work for you during bar study. So those are two questions. Then you want to start to go a little bit deeper. You want to ask yourself, what are my anxiety triggers? Anxiety triggers are individualized to the person, and you're the only one who can answer that question. So figure out what they are. You may not be able to eliminate all of them, but you can do things now to minimize the effect they have on you. A deeper question is, who are the toxic people in my life? Those people that when you talk to them or you leave their presence, you feel worse about yourself than you did before you met with them, right? And again, it's not about eliminating those people, it's about minimizing the effect. So figure out how to interact with them so that when you leave them, if you interact with them, you don't feel like you have to pick yourself up out of the gutter. You owe that to yourself. And if you can start doing that now, maybe by the time you study for the bar exam, you have really created this circle around you of people who bring you joy and who esteem you. And you have really pushed away some of those people that make you feel not so good about yourself. And so then the last question, and there may be others, but you've got to ask yourself about the negative talk. You know, the conversations that you have in your own that start off with things like, you can't do this, you're not smart enough, you're never going to get this. And what you're going to start doing now is having a retort for each one of those that's rooted in truth. So if something bubbles up inside of you, the gremlin says, you'll never be able to get this because you're not smart enough, then the response to that is, well, I was smart enough to do well enough on the LSAT to get where I am right now. And I remember for me, years ago, someone told me that because I was left-handed, I would never learn how to drive a stick. And that really got in my craw. And so what did I do? The first car I bought was a stick. And over the weekend, I taught myself how to drive that car. And it made me feel good because that was something that someone told me I couldn't do. That story came back to mind one day in law school. day, and I started to hear that voice inside say, Tanae, what have you done? You really got yourself in a place that you can't get yourself out of. You cannot do this. And I remember teaching myself how to drive a stick in 2 days. And I said, if I could do that, I can surely do this. And so that's what you want to start doing. But spend time in the mirror, asking yourself the difficult questions, do that self-assessment, be honest, and make sure it ends on a positive note. So we'll move on to, again, a part of that self-assessment. These are known risk factors for bar exam success. People have studied outcomes on bar exams for many, and they found out, or they've come up with this list of the top things that make it difficult for people to pass the bar exam the first time. So there is a risk factor for everybody who sits for the bar exam. These are just some of the top ones. Students who are older, non-traditional students, sometimes have a more difficult time with the bar exam. Lazy students and lazy studiers surely do. Students that don't take a commercial bar review course statistically do worse on the bar exam than those who do. African-American students, it's hard for me to see this when I was in law school, but I was grateful that I did because it formed and inspired me to work that much harder. And so the 2.6 in the middle of the screen is law school graduating GPA. And studies have shown that that is the most outcome determinative factor on who's going to struggle on the bar exam and who will not. So statistically, and the studies bear out, that those that graduate law school with an LGPA of 2.6 or lower pass the bar exam at about a rate of about 32 to 35%, as compared to those who graduate with an LGPA of higher than 2.6, who graduate or who pass the bar exam at anywhere between a 78 to 81% passage rate. So when I work with law students, this can be a slide where people start to shut down. And I don't allow them to do that because I don't call these risk factors. I call them multipliers. The way I took this information when I sat in your shoes is, oh, you know what? 2 of those apply to me. I'm an older student, and if you haven't figured out yet, I am African American. And so what that said to me is I've got to work 2 times harder. And that's exactly what I did. Every single day of bar study, I worked what I felt was twice as hard as I intended to work that day. And it panned out. I passed the North Carolina bar exam on first attempt, and then I immediately took the South Carolina bar exam because I love to torture myself. And fortunately, I passed that one as well on first attempt. And the South Carolina bar exam, when I took it years ago, was a 3-day bar exam. So triple the fun. But if you're looking at this slide and you're saying, oh, that could be me, then use them not as risk factors, but as multipliers. And then I'll ask you to do what Michonne does on The Walking, my husband's favorite show, is pull out your katana and slay each one of those risk factors that apply to you with the hard work that you're going to put into law school and continue to put in during bar review. And I'll just pause there and let you sit with that for a second. Okay, so in my years of working with law students, so I've been a law school professor for a number of years, and now, in addition to having my own practice, I travel to law schools around the country to help students get ready for the bar exam. And what I've learned is there are really 2 types of law students, the successful and the unsuccessful. And I want to inspire you to stay on the side of the successful law student. And here are some of the characteristics that I've noticed that these students do every day. Number 1 is they join an effective study group. And you'll know it's effective when after you leave that group setting, whether you feel stronger in the rules that you've been practicing or not. If you don't, then you might need to change study groups. But study groups are important. For me, my study group came together the second week of law school, And we studied together all the way through the bar exam, and we all passed the bar exam. So the effective is probably the most important aspect of the study group, but you want to join one. Successful law students put in the work and then some. So just because everyone in your study group got a concept, if there's a rule or an aspect of a rule that you didn't get, then that means you've got to do a little bit more to solidify it. Because remember, everything that you're doing now is what you will be tested on when you sit for the bar exam. So nothing that you're learning now do you want to just gloss over. Nothing that you're learning now do you want to say, oh, thank God that class is over. I never want to see that again, because I'm telling you today, you will see it again. And when you see it again on the bar exam, the examiner is expecting you not just to know it, but to really master it. So do what you have to do to make sure that it makes sense to you. And one way to do that is seeking help. I know that CLEO is going to make resources available to you. Use them, but you've got resources right at your fingertips in the you go to in class every day. PAs, and your number one resource being your professor. When I was a law school professor, I loved when students would make appointments with me. The conversations we would have, the questions that they asked actually made me a better professor, but inspired me to do the work, right? It got me excited because I knew that I had students that were dialed in. But I'll tell you this, student conferences with me were rare. And I never understood that, because that's what I was there for. My office hours, I was paid to be there to be a resource for my students. And very few students took advantage of that. So be different. I want to inspire you. We talked about what inspiration is. I want to inspire you to be different, to be creative, and to go the extra mile for yourself and for your future in the practice of law. Because Lord knows the practice of law needs you. And lastly, well, not lastly, but successful law students also find ways to manage and decrease stress. We talked about the stressors, the anxiety, the toxic people. If you can start to minimize the effect that they have on you now, it will serve you well during bar study, and it'll serve you well during what will be high anxiety times in the practice of law. And so, number one, students that do well in law school and on bar exams are grateful to be there. So it's the attitude of gratitude. I started law school when I was in my late 30s. I walked away from a very successful career, and for a lot of people that just seemed like an unwise step. But the feedback that I got when I told people that I respected, that I looked to for direction in my quitting my job and going to law school full time, the number one response I got was, I always wanted to go to law school. And that really pushed me back on my heels, because it got me to the point where I understood that what I was doing was something that most people only dreamed about doing. And I was biting the bullet and getting it done. And on those real low days of law school and bar study, that's what got me through. I was grateful to have the opportunity. I was grateful that my brain was working on all four cylinders. I was grateful that I was accepted to sit for the bar exam, and that all I had to do was show that I was worthy. And I submit to you, there are people in your circle who you know to be smart and be go-getters, and they're looking at you saying, wow, I always wanted to go to law school. I took the LSAT, and now those logic games said, oh no, I don't ever want to do this again, and they stopped. And some of you had friends in law semester that didn't come back the second semester, but you remained, again, in the small subset of people who had a dream, set a goal, and followed through with it. That attitude of gratitude will get you further than many other things you'll do in law school and in life. So do what you can to be grateful for where you are and to stay in the spirit of gratitude. Because what you want to never happen is to slip into what those who are unsuccessful do. They do things like ostracize themselves. They hide out and retreat. You never see them except for class. After class, you wonder, what do they do? Because we never see them. Or they do things like look at other people and say, well, they're not studying, so I'm not going to study either. You can't do law school like other people. You have to do law school in the way that makes it make sense to you. Another big mistake is they begin to live like lawyers. Lunches out every day, Starbucks every morning, setting themselves up for a financial strain that will increase anxiety and really can cause problems later on in life. And the biggest one is they just develop and slip into a negative attitude about the process, law school, and they start to just really operate out of fear and anxiety and anger. And in my life, I've worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different disciplines. I've never seen anyone succeed when they operate out of fear and anxiety. So my number one goal here is to keep you on the side of the successful characteristics, that you slip into them now and you stay in them all the way through. So the law school process, you're figuring out what that is. You've got to master your first year classes. You implement a study plan and stick with it. Use the resources that are available to you. But it really is about committing and recommitting. Committing to yourself and the goals that you've set for yourself. Committing to work. Am I still on? I hope that I am. Okay, it looks like I'm back. Sorry about that. It is storming cats and dogs here in North Carolina. We have been in a horrible weather pattern, so let's get back to where we were. Again, my apologies, and we will start from right there. Let's see if it will allow me to do that. And if not, if you can hear me, I'll just keep going because I know where my slides are. Okay, so what during law school, and we hit on some of these. These are the puzzle pieces. This is what you're doing now to make sure that you go into bar study as long as you possibly can. And so you'll read those, but I'm going to focus on being professional and being a good steward. Stewardship is the key to success in life that many people overlook. Stewardship is just the process of taking what you have, being grateful for it, and making it better since it's been in your hands. So how does that apply to law school? Every opportunity you're given to intern, to shadow, you want to show up as strong as you possibly can because you never know when you're going to need that person to speak highly of you. You never know when you will pop into someone's mind and you want that pop to be a positive one and not a negative one. But financially, this is where stewardship comes into play. Anyone in this line of work of getting students ready for the bar exam will say you do not need to work when you're studying for the bar exam. And I've worked with students who were unsuccessful because they had to work, because they made poor choices with their money while they were in law school. It's that whole living like a lawyer thing. They were taking trips. They were having lunches and dinner with their student loans, not realizing that when you finish law school, the cost of bar review, the cost of living during bar study and not working is all on you. It's very hard to get bar study now, and even if they were easy, I really wouldn't advise incurring more debt after law school. So the process from study to passing and starting your job takes about 8 months. And so that's 8 months where you're not really able to earn any money. So being a good steward over your money now will serve you well so that when you're studying for the bar exam, you don't have the money anxiety gremlins coming at you and you can focus. And it also serves another purpose, that when the jobs come your way, you don't have to jump at the one that pays you the most, but you can say yes to the opportunity that speaks to the reasons why you went to law school in the first place. And the only way you can do that is to be a good steward over your time and money now. And that is something that you can start doing today. And I implore you to start doing that today, because I truly believe that stewardship is the key to success in life, and good stewardship is the key to success in life. So when you put all those pieces together and you take advantage of every resource that you have, you go into bar study as strong as you possibly can, because bar study is riddled with or littered with its own anxiety. So the less anxiety you bring to the process that already has its own anxiety, the better. And that's what doing all you can do now will help you do. So there's also the piece that a lot of people overlook, and that is the process of making sure that you, as a human being, a living being entity, is okay through this process. Because even though you're just sitting down studying, it's very taxing on the body and on the mind. And here are things that you can start doing now to be conscious about everything you do now as in furtherance of that march, that progressive step into being strong going into the bar study period. So today, you want to start eating consciously. That means eating foods that get you closer to your goal. Foods that after you eat, you feel satiated, you feel nourished and energized. And number one, you want to start eating breakfast. I was not a breakfast eater before law school, but I soon became one because I needed my brain working on all cylinders. You want to start weaving in brain food. When I studied for the North Carolina bar exam, I literally ate the same thing every single day. I had boiled eggs for breakfast. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on whole wheat bread for lunch with apple slices and a bag of blueberries. And I threw in some nuts there as well. And that's what I ate every single day. For dinner, it was sensible. I didn't eat anything that left me feeling tired, lethargic, or anything like that for the entire period of bar review. And I'll tell you, I was in my best physical shape when I took the bar exam as well, because I also moved my body, but I was putting in really good foods. So they say the darker, the more natural the food, the better it is for the body. Doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to go to Whole Foods. Walmart has a great line of organic and healthy whole foods, but you want to start putting those into your body. It really, really makes a difference. So that's step one. That's what you can start doing today. Next, you want to start moving your body. Even though you feel like, well, I'm studying, all I'm doing is sitting down, it is very draining on the body, the type of intense study that you will have to do. You want to add those breaths that we started with. An easy one is inhale for 3 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, and exhale for 5 seconds. You will absolutely have to do that during the bar exam because the anxiety will start to build up and you're going to have to dial yourself back down to a place of peace and a place where you can get to your strong self. And start drinking more. Drinking is key. Hydration is key to focus and memorization. So drink more water. drink green tea to get the antioxidants, but you've got to stay hydrated, you've got to stay moving, and then you've also, on the next slide, you've got to sleep. So sleep deprivation and dehydration manifest in us the same way. We feel tired, we are forgetful, we are lethargic, and it feels like operating in a fog. That is the complete opposite of where you need to be to perform on the bar exam. For the bar exam, you need to be alert, and you need to be able to memorize and recall. So sleep deprivation and dehydration is not where you want to be when you're studying for the bar exam and when you go to take the exam. So drink more, set a sleep time, and go to sleep at that time every night, starting now. Easy Sudoku is there because it's just a numbers logic game. You can find apps on your phone for free, and when you do have downtime, just start doing Sudoku. It really primes the brain for what you'll have to do on the multiple choice questions and even on the essays. Live on a budget. Well, create a budget as a law student and live within it, and then moderate your caffeine. If your body needs caffeine, nicotine, you want to do what you can now to wean yourself off of those things, because you won't be able to take a coffee break or a smoke break when you're taking the bar exam. Every second of the bar exam will be necessary for you to pass. So these are tips that I share around the country with law students who are studying for the bar exam, and we are providing them to you early. I want you to use them, find one or two that you will commit to implementing today so that you can pass this darn exam the first time. We talked about the march, but when the closer you get to the bar exam, this is the posture you're taking. You're not passively walking in, you're aggressively running toward your next step. This is a part of your legacy. Do everything that you can to live the life that you feel created to live. And like I said, the practice of law needs you. And we'll be waiting for you with open arms. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish each of you success in everything you set your mind to. Good luck.
All right, thank you so much. That concludes at least the first part of our webinar. We're going to see if there are any questions for Tanae. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat and we can go ahead and respond to it. So I'll just give a moment to see if there are any questions right now. Okay. I don't see any questions, so let's go ahead and move forward to the part 2 of our presentation, and I'll go ahead and let Anna continue with that. Oh, hold on, you have to unmute. Let me make sure you're unmuted. Okay, try again.
Yeah, hi everyone, can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to get my PowerPoint on here, but good afternoon. My name is Anna Otero. My part of this presentation is really informational. It's going to be about the materials that you need to really begin preparing for the bar. And this is material that you can actually begin doing on your very first semester of law school. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the bar exam. And I know we're going to have some questions afterwards, but I want to talk a little bit about how you can prepare early on. So a little bit about myself. I teach at Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston. I teach civil procedure, evidence, and I teach a third-year class that prepares students for the bar. So I'm very familiar with bar support and preparing students for the bar beginning early on in your first semester. So I want to really familiarize you with the bar exam and all you need to know so that going into your second semester, or actually you're almost in that, you're in that now, but going into your second year, you have all the materials and tools that you need to be able to succeed. The information that Attorney Hines gave you is wonderful in terms of mentally preparing yourself and being ready. But there's also a lot of stuff that you can do in terms of actual preparation and understanding what's ahead. So the ultimate exam that you will take after law school, of course, is the bar exam. This is a great time to start thinking about that, at least familiarizing yourself with what is the bar exam, what exactly is covered in the bar exam. And the more you know now, the better off you will be later on, so that you can actually begin preparing even in your second year of your first year, second semester of your first year. So 32 states have adopted the uniform bar exam. So it used to be that every state offered its own bar exam. In Texas, we still do. We use a portion of the bar exam offered by the National Bar Examiners, National Conference of the Bar Examiners, but we do not have what is now called the uniform bar exam. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because to be well prepared, the first thing you need to know is whether this state where you will be taking a bar exam offers the uniform bar exam, or whether, like Texas, it still has its own exam. So a lot of states are going uniform. There's many advantages to that. One of the advantages is if you take the uniform bar exam in a jurisdiction where it is administered, you can transfer that score to another state. When I went to law school, for example, you couldn't do that. So I have taken the bar exam of Florida, Texas, New York, and New Jersey in order to be able to practice in the states that I wanted to practice law. That is now changed quite a lot, and it's in constant fluctuation. So you really need to be mindful of the fact that this is not at all stagnant. And by the time you take the bar 2 years from now, it might have changed a little bit in your state as well. For example, in Texas right now, we do not have the uniform bar exam, but we will in February 2021. So if I were making this presentation today and one of you is going to take the Texas bar exam, you're not going to be looking at the Texas bar exam as it is offered for this bar cycle, which is next week. You will be looking for the uniform bar exam. So let's talk a little bit about the uniform bar exam. So first of all, the uniform bar exam is coordinated by an entity called the National Conference of Bar Examiners. It is composed of basically three major parts: the multi-state essay examination, the multi-state performance test, and the multi-state bar exam. So it is 2 days of examination. The multi-state bar exam is offered on Wednesday, and the multi-state essays and the multi-state performance test are offered on the Tuesday. The bar exam is always offered on the last week of February, the last week of July, and the uniform bar exam is 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday. So let me go on to talking a little bit about the jurisdictions that have adopted the UBE. As you can see, there are a number of states that have offered the UBE. And if your state is on that list, then the uniform bar exam is what's going to be offered in your state. And this presentation is going to be particularly insightful because I'm going to talk about the exam that you will be sitting for. If you notice, Texas does not have the UBE until, should begin in 2021. As of now, we do not have a UBE. So if you're on that list of states that have already adopted the UBE or about to adopt the UBE, then you should really be mindful of what that uniform bar exam requires. So let's talk about the components of the uniform bar exam and how helpful it is to know this going into your second year, and how helpful is this in your second semester of your first year. All right, so the multi-state examination, the MEE, consists of 6 30-minute exams, right? These are essay exams. It is administered on the Tuesday before the Wednesday where the MBE will be offered. And it depends on the jurisdiction, but in most jurisdictions, it counts as 30% of your score. That means that the writing portion of your exam will be very useful. In other words, everything you're learning right now in terms of legal writing will be put to the test on this ultimate exam of the UBE when you are tested on the essay portion of the exam. The areas that will be tested, we'll talk about that in a minute, but this exam will be actually looking at identifying legal issues, right? Separate material which is relevant from that which is not. Presenting a recent analysis of the relevant issues in a manner that is clear and concise and well organized. Demonstrating an understanding of the fundamental legal principles that are relevant to the solutions. of the issues raised by the facts. It is basically an essay question. If in the school that you're currently a law student at, you are doing a lot of essay exams, then the MEE will be the equivalent of the same exam. Every school is different. For example, in my school, Thurgood Marshall, we offered a lot of multiple choice exams, and we use a format that is used on the Wednesday. Although in many of the classes, of course, we do a combination of multiple choice type questions as well as essays. So if you are now taking classes where you're being tested on the essay format, you're actually practicing for the multi-state essay exam because it is the same format, the same idea. And what you need to remember is those legal principles that you're learning in those classes now. So let's look at the subjects that are being tested. Business associations, you're probably not taking that yet. Corporations probably will be a second-year course. And so is conflict of laws and constitutional law. But certainly civil procedure, contracts, torts, these are classes that you're now taking in your first year. They're also going to be the subject of the classes in the multi-state essay exam. So obviously, whatever you learn now in those classes is going to be exceedingly useful for the multi-state essay exam. And so I recommend, and I piggyback on what Tanae said before in her first presentation, being prepared, understanding that your first year of law school is exceedingly important for you to prepare for the multi-state essay exam, for the bar exam, is really quite helpful. Because as you're preparing your outlines for civil procedure, as you're preparing your outlines for evidence and torts and contracts, you keep in mind that these may also come up not only in the multi-state bar exam, but very possibly for the multi-state essay exam. So being very prepared and knowing this information is very helpful as you move on to your second year. In your second year of law school, you're going to have evidence, you're going to have constitutional law, perhaps conflict of laws, perhaps trust and states, and all of these topics will still be tested in that multi-state essay exam. So being well prepared, taking good notes and preparing really strong outlines now will be helpful later on as well. So let's talk about the multi-state performance test. This is also on the Tuesday of the exam. In many jurisdictions of the UBE, this is going to count as 20% of your score. So this is a written exam as well. So everything, all the skills that you have learned in your first, second, and third year of law school will be very helpful for the multi-state performance test. Let's talk a little bit about what the test is about. It's not really testing substantive knowledge because the examiners are going to give you a packet of about 18 pages. And for the uniform bar exam, you're going to have 2 of these exams. You're going to get a packet which is about 18 to 20 pages. It's going to have a file. It's going to have a library. And you are put in the shoes of a lawyer where you have to analyze a problem and provide in writing a solution to that problem, whether it's a memorandum of law, whether it is a discovery plan, whether it's a closing argument. You are placed in the shoes of a lawyer who knows and has fundamental lawyering skills, and you have to complete the task in a realistic situation. And so usually these exams are only 90 minutes. And so you have about 45 minutes for reading, 45 minutes for writing the work product, and it's very legal writing intensive. So if it's 30% of the grade, along with the 30% for the essays, you're looking at about an exam that is 60% of legal writing and legal analysis. And understanding that today will be helpful as you prepare for your second semester of first year, second year, and third year, because everything you learn regarding legal writing will be exceedingly helpful as you move through law school for these exams as well. So that's the multi-state essay exam and the MPT. Those 2 exams are on Tuesday, and they are, the bulk of those exams is about legal analysis and legal writing, producing a written product that will be what you will be graded on. Then the Wednesday of your exam is a multi-state bar exam. Many schools, like my schools, offer a lot of practice exams on the multi-state bar exam. For example, we do a whole lot of testing in the same manner that the multi-state bar exam will be tested, which is basically multiple choice questions. This exam is on Wednesday for the uniform bar exam. It is 200 questions, 100 in the morning, 100 in the afternoon. It's a highly time-sensitive exam so that you have to finish each question. You have 1.8 minutes for each question, and you have 3 hours, so obviously 180 minutes. And so this is an exam that in most UBE jurisdictions counts as 50% of your score, so it's a high scoring value. And it covers all of your first year courses. So that will cover questions on civil procedure, constitutional law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, which may be in your second year, real property, and torts. So you can see very quickly how understanding what's involved in the bar exam, whether it is a uniform bar exam or whether it is a jurisdiction that does not have the bar exam, and I'll address that in a few minutes, all of these topics that you take in your first and second year of law school are highly valuable in terms of how they're going to prepare you for that final exam. So, for example, if you're not taking the uniform bar exam because you are in a state like Texas, we don't have the uniform bar exam yet. We will in 2021, but regardless, on the Wednesday of our bar exam, we still have the exam offered by the National Conference of Bar Examiners. So every jurisdiction, whether or not it has a uniform bar exam, will be sitting for this exam, the multi-state bar exam. In Texas, for example, we do not have the multiple essay exam or the multi-state essay exam, I should say, because we're not UBE yet. But we do have a portion on a Thursday, which is all essays, but they are state specific. And then we also have one multi-state performance test on the Tuesday. So we have a combination of what the uniform bar exam does. So regardless of where you are sitting for a bar exam, this information is highly valuable for you. So examinees who take the uniform bar exam earn a portable score that can be transferred to other jurisdictions that have the UBE. So for example, we in Texas do not have the UBE yet, so you would not be able to transfer your score here, but if you are in jurisdictions that have UBE, they will be transferable. And that is one of the most important reasons why states are adopting the uniform bar exam. These are the states that do not have the uniform bar exam. So if you are sitting for a bar exam in these jurisdictions, I would suggest that you go to the state bar website of those states and find out today. Don't wait until the third year. Find out about what your state will be doing. But keep in mind that many of these states, by the time you take the bar exam, may have adopted a uniform bar exam. And in those states, even if they're not offering a uniform bar exam, they are going to be having the multi-state bar exam, because that is an exam that is shared by all jurisdictions. On the Wednesday of every bar exam cycle, you're going to be sitting for the 200 multiple choice question covering the topics we talked about before. So I think in terms of preparation, it's really valuable for you to familiarize yourself with the bar exam of your jurisdiction. If it's one of the uniform bar exam jurisdictions, and this presentation will help you understand what the uniform bar exam does. If it's the other 18 states that does not have the uniform bar exam, then you should go to the website of those states and familiarize yourself with what is being offered in terms of a bar exam in those states. So as I said before, these 18 states will implement some type of multiple bar exam, usually held on the Wednesday. And in some instances, they will have an MPT exam. So for example, in Texas, we have an MBE, which is the 200 multiple choice questions on Wednesday. And then on Tuesday, we have the multi-state performance test, but it's only one. The uniform bar exam offers 2 of those exams. Important for you to find out about the composition of your states as well. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about an exam that is not taken at the same time as the bar exam, but is taken and required by most states except Maryland will not be requiring until March 2019. Wisconsin and Puerto Rico do not require, but this is the multi-state professional responsibility examination. It is offered 3 times a year. It is a 2-hour, 60-question multiple choice exam, generally administered in March in August and in November. And this exam too is fluctuating because right now in most jurisdictions, the exam is taken at a site where you actually take the exam in paper form. But beginning in 2000, probably by the July cycle of this year, they will begin offering the exam in a format which will be on online format, I should say. So again, fluctuations in this exam are very common. And so you need to be mindful of where to access the information as to what your particular jurisdiction is offering in terms of bar exam, because it is constantly changing. So let's talk about the Mpre. The purpose of this exam is to measure the examinee's knowledge and understanding of established standards as they relate to professional conduct of lawyers. The exam also covers professional conduct of judges as well. So of course we know that lawyers serve in many capacities, including judges, advocates, counselors, and in these roles, professional rules trigger in a variety of ways. And so the law governing the conduct of these lawyers is applied in disciplinary and bar admission procedures. The exam will test your knowledge of how these rules of professional conduct play out in each of these roles. So generally, you can take these exams separate from the bar exam, and many students take this in their second year or the third year of law school, and the times that it's offered. It's not taken along with the bar exam, but in most jurisdictions, you must have taken a bar exam, the Mpre, to be able to be licensed by that state. So as I said, it's taken separately from the bar exam, and you probably want to take it in the second or third year of law school. And you will probably take a bar review course for this exam as well. What review course you use, it's really up to you, but most bar review courses, whether Kaplan or Barbary or whatever bar review course you decide to take, will also offer a briefer course for the Mpre. So why should I start thinking about the bar exam in my first year of law school, right? So I've given you a lot of information about the bar exam and the different components of that bar exam. Why should I start thinking about the bar in my first year of law school? Because many of the courses that you are sitting for right now, that you're studying for and preparing for your bar exams in May now, are going to be on the bar exam. And you will probably not see these courses again until you prepare for the bar exam. So it's really useful for you to have your good outlines, your strong outlines prepared early on, so that maybe during the summers, before the bar exam, not just immediately before the bar exam, but once in a while, perhaps next summer, you may want to go back and look at these outlines and keep the information refreshed and available so that you are not so far from what you learn in your first year when you're studying for the bar. How do I use law school to prepare for the bar exam? Well, think about how much of the bar exam entails legal writing. How much of the bar exam requires you to have strong legal writing skills in terms of legal reasoning, legal analysis, organization. And so take courses in law school that are going to help you fine-tune and hone your legal writing skills. And for example, I can speak about my school. We offer a number of bar exam courses in the third year that prepare the students to take the essay classes, that prepare the students to take the multi-set performance test. But even in schools that do not offer bar exam specific courses, take classes that require an independent writing component or a research component, a writing component, because all of these classes are going to, of course, have the effect of fine-tuning your skills to be able to write an essay exam, which in most jurisdictions counts about 50% of the bar. So in terms of studying for the bar exam, understanding the black letter law is important, but knowing how to apply it is another very important component. So for example, for a legal essay exam, you need to know the law of evidence. You need to know about hearsay. You need to know about character evidence. But being able to develop an essay question or an essay answer that asks about hearsay, that asks about character evidence, it's a very important component. And in many law schools, there's a lot of legal writing involved in all of these exams. But that practice is going to be exceedingly helpful in practicing later on for the bar exam as well. So how do I use law school to prepare for the bar exam? You take courses that you know are going to be useful in preparing you for legal writing essays. you take courses that are going to be useful in practicing, for example, a performance test like the Multiset performance test. Knowing that ahead of the game and taking classes that will in fact prepare you for that information will be exceedingly useful. So having a good understanding about the bar allows you, of course, to have a stronger footing on law school courses. Think about this. The first year curriculum plus evidence and constitutional law will be tested in the Multiset bar exam. I want to remind you that the National Conference of Bar Examiners, that site, National Conference of Bar Examiners, provides a lot of very insightful information. One thing I want to share with you is it provides an outline, the subject matter outlines for all of the MBE courses. And so if you download that information now and include it perhaps in a binder that you call the bar exam binder, it focuses your study your study on the areas that are going to be on the bar. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. If you go to the National Conference of Bar Examiners website and you click on NBE exams, right, or NCBE exams, and you click on the MBE, there is a click for something called subject matter outlines, or a link, I should say. And if you click on the subject matter outlines for evidence, it will tell you that 1/5 of the 25 questions on the MBE exam are based in the area of hearsay, for example. Another 1/5 may be based on the area of character evidence and impeachment. This is important because as you're preparing studying for the MBE, knowing what areas are going to be heavily tested will provide focus in studying for this exam, right? So the Multiset bar exam contains the 200 questions, 25 in each of the areas that we talked about, and then some are experimental questions. But understanding what areas the examiners are focusing on early on allows you to not only prepare well for your exams in class right now, but also for the exam that you will be taking later on. So let's think about the importance of legal writing. The Uniform Bar Exam's writing portion constitutes 50% of the exam. So knowing black letter law is one component, but being able to access that information to produce a writing sample that is organized, that it analyzes, that it hits on all the points is also exceedingly important. In the jurisdictions that do not have the UBE like Texas, this is a higher percentage. For example, in Texas right now, the writing portion of the exam is 60%. The MBE counts only as 40%. So a student taking the bar exam in Texas has to have really strong writing skills because 60% of its score goes towards the ability for that student to write a cohesive and organized essay or MPT that makes sense and that hits on all the points that the examiners are testing. So being aware of the importance of having strong writing skills for the bar is a very effective way to prepare for that ultimate test. So let me ask you this question. Does law school curriculum affect bar examination passage? There's a study, and some people believe that it really doesn't affect it that much. I believe that it does, and only or to the extent, I should say, that choosing the classes that are going to target the areas in which you may be a little bit deficient is going to be helpful. So for example, if coming out of your first year of law school, you know that your writing skills are not what they need to be, and you know that that's going to be a very high valued score on the bar exam, then I would plan to take classes that have a writing component. And so I do think that taking courses that are going to prepare to the bar may be helpful. Plus writing, you have to remember, is also a very important part of being a lawyer. Whether you're a lawyer, whether you become a judge at some point in your life, whether you become a law professor, writing is also, it's always an important component of lawyering. So what resources are there to prepare and study for the bar? Well, I would say my first suggestion would be, is there an academic support or an academic success program in your school? We have one here at Thurgood Marshall School of Law, and this is a department of our school that works with students beginning in the first year to prepare them for the bar. So for example, that department in my school offers 1L Academy, right? And so on a Saturday, they'll come in and they'll refresh subjects like civil procedure and evidence and torts and contracts in preparation for the students' exams at the end of the semester. So I do think that that is a very important resource. Sample test questions on the National Conference of Bar Examiners, which is too early for you to look at right now, right? This will be later on in your life, but just know, right now, the only thing I want you to know is that the National Conference of Bar Examiners on its website has sample exam questions, has MBE type sample test questions that you can purchase. And also it has, for example, MPT, actually old MPT exams, multi-site performance tests, which actually has the test and the sample point sheets, which are the answers to help you understand what the examiners were looking for. So the National Conference of Bar Examiners offers a lot of resources right on their website, but you learn about that by perhaps talking to your academic success program department, if there is one, or other professors who may be able in your school to help you with some ideas on finding these resources. Registering for a bar review course, I'm sure that this will be covered also by Professor Chang's presentation, but most bar review courses offer early registration. You sign up early for them, and they actually provide you with first-year law school outlines, which are helpful in preparing and looking at that material for your examination. And also, how do you choose a bar prep course? I think you need to talk to students who are taking Barbary and Kaplan, or talk to your counselors in school, academic support, and they will help you choose the bar prep course that works best for you. All of these bar prep courses, though, are, I think, in my own mind, a necessity in preparing you for the bar exam, because you need to have a structure in preparing for the bar exam. And I do think that students that do not sign up for a bar prep course do not do as well as they could if they have that structure and all of the materials and knowledge and practice that are offered by these folks. So that's a real important part. I don't have anything else at this point, because I believe that we're going to have some questions. We have probably will be addressing a lot of questions at the end of the workshop. And so I'm going to sign off at this time and pass it on to Professor Chang, and then we'll probably be addressing some of the questions that you may have at the end of all of our presentations. Thank you. And I will look forward to talking to you at the end.
Thank you so much. Since Professor, where did it go? Oh, sorry, my speaker. Since Professor Antero has told us that we'll ask questions at the end of my session, I'll go ahead and continue, especially since mine builds on what she had just spoken about with the academic success, and then we'll open it up for questions through the chat. So let me just go ahead and share my screen really quickly. I think you have to unshare your screen though. Let me see if I share mine. You have to stop your, okay.
Is it off?
Yes, I think I got it. There we go. Okay. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my PowerPoint here. So let's go ahead and begin. So my name is Christina Chong. Let me just stop this video real quick so it's not in the way. Sorry, 1 second. I think okay, here we go. There you go. Now I can actually show you my PowerPoint. All right. So here is my presentation. My name is Christina Chong. I work currently at the University of California, Irvine, and I work in the academic support department, which is what we were just discussing in the previous part too. What I'm going to do today at this last part of our webinar today is to just talk first about what academic support is in detail, and talk about how you can actually access and use this resource effectively. We want you to actually use this at your school, because they actually have more information of your professors, what they like to do, their preferences, and can give you those hands-on sort of tips that you need to succeed in law school and ultimately the bar exam. I'll also talk about what you should do if you have no academic support program at your school, because there are some schools that don't have a program yet, but it is becoming more popular in the law school academia. Finally, we'll talk about what you should do this semester to succeed in law school, because I know you've had 1 semester under your belt, which means you have a bunch of finals that were given to you. And so now we want to see, okay, now that I have the finals and this feedback, what should I be doing to get the most out of my spring semester? And then finally, what resources are available to you through CLEO and other types of sources that you should have at your school. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is just what academic support is. Academic support is pretty much a free program at your school that provides academic assistance to all students. At most schools, it will be a professional that's hired with a law degree that you can go and access, or a professor. There's a lot of different types of setups where it could be a faculty member, a staff member, or even they have a bunch of student fellows or TAs. If you have an academic support department, you just kind of want to figure out who that contact person is. Once you do that, you can usually access them to get things like one-on-one appointments and even feedback on your hypos or more hypos from your professors. They have a wealth of resources that you can use and even can help you set up calendars or study schedules to help you be the most effective this spring. It's also very helpful to have someone who is a professional in the academic support field, because they're able to see, you know, what students have done in the past that have made them successful, and maybe what you have been doing or haven't been doing this spring and in the fall that might be either hurting you or making you successful, right? A lot of schools that also have academic support have workshops. They're usually participating in orientation and even have unit credit classes. If you can remember back in September or August when you had orientation, there might have been some random faculty member or student or staff member that came and introduced themselves as an academic skills or academic support person. So I would definitely try to jog your memory, or, you know, see if there have been any workshops that have been emailed to you that you haven't been attending. I would definitely capitalize on that. In terms of the size, most schools range from 1 to 5 people. The larger your school is, the more people will probably be in your academic support department. Also, if you have a department that also offers bar support, you'll have more people. So for example, at Irvine, we have 3 to 4 of us, but we also offer bar support, versus a school that only offers academic support and doesn't offer bar support might only have 1 person working with one else, right? So you kind of want to just start with understanding, what is the academic support offered at my school? How do I contact them? And then figure out, well, what do I need from them? Do I need more routine feedback? Do I need hypos? Do I just need to talk it out? What's my goal? You will also hear a lot of people in the industry refer to academic support as ASP. The S usually stands for either skill, support, success. There's a variation in what schools actually use to call their program, but it's all usually offering the same types of services. So once you've figured out, okay, I have an academic supports department, how do you actually contact them? So I would say to search your school's website for the contact information. You can usually just put in ASP or academic skills program or whatever the program is called, and it'll pop up with an email address or the director of academic support, who will be able to point you in the right direction. After that, you would email the director, assistant director, professor, student fellow, whoever, and just ask them, usually just for a one-on-one appointment. After that, they'll be able to put a plan together and help you figure out, well, what study strategies will work best for me. If for some reason you can't find the contact information on the website, or you're not sure what the department is called, or you're not even sure if you have an academic skills program, I would recommend asking your student services department, asking your professors, or asking upperclassmen. If you do have an academic support department, one of these departments or people will know, and they will be able to give you that contact information. However, if you find out my school doesn't have an academic support department, you've asked student services, you've asked all the professors, no one knows what you're talking about at all because this program doesn't exist, what can you do? I'm going to give you some tips now of what you can do to be successful in the case that you don't have an academic support department, because you still want to figure out, well, what happened last semester if I didn't do so well, or what did I do last semester that caused me to get such good grades? And so what I would recommend is, if you don't have an academic skills program, is to first start with these resources. And you have professors, student mentors, community groups, and of course, CLEO. For professors, if you don't have an academic support department, or even if you have an academic support department, going to your professors is really, really important. So I encourage you to actually go to their office hours, meet with them about your exams, talk to them about your exams, figure out what happened, what you could do better, what you did well, so that you can repeat it or improve on your exams this semester. If your professors for some reason are not accessible, or not really, their teaching style doesn't really match your learning style, that's okay. I would still try, but you can also go to student mentors. Most schools have at least some sort of mentoring program set up that you can connect with the students who had the same professor as you, and kind of get tips on, well, what did you do on the exam? How did you outline the exam? Do you have an example of an outline that I could use as an example to create mine, right? So tapping into your community is also a great way to supplement whatever the professor is unable to give you. Finally, community groups, and this is where I'm talking about student groups, maybe BOLSA, APOLSA, SBA, which is the student, groups that they have, the student government groups. You might want to actually see if they offer any workshops or academic related events. In cases where a school does not have an academic support program, there will be more activity among the community groups trying to offer you this support, because it's not institutionalized at your university. Now, if that's the case, you should be attending these workshops so you can really find out the information that will help you succeed in law school. And then finally, you have CLEO. So you can contact us. I'm here to help. I'm in the academic support field. I have lots of information, and I'm always welcome to answer. I always welcome any questions, and I'm happy to answer. So I've given you my email address here, which you're welcome to use throughout the semester if you have questions about just how to navigate law school or how to kind of improve your performance. And so now the whole thing, you want to go to other people to figure out, well, how can I get better? But one of the most important things that I think is important for students to learn is, well, how do I myself improve? Because what if my professor is not helpful? There are no student mentors. I had a community group workshop, but it wasn't that useful. And even though I contact Professor Chong, she's not at my school, so she's unable to help me in the way that I need to be helped at this very moment. And so my big thing is to really focus on this thing called self-assessment. And so these two quotes that I have here, expert learners engage in 3 phases to actively control their behavior, motivation, and thinking process: forethought, performance, and reflection. So I'm going to go through the steps you should take now in the spring semester that you've had some feedback in the fall, which is how you performed on these law school exams, so you can improve this semester and ultimately improve your skills so you can pass the bar examination. One thing you have to remember as we go through that is feedback-seeking behavior, as it's called in the research literature, has been linked to higher job satisfaction, greater creativity on the job, faster adaptation in a new organization or role, and lower turnover. And seeking out negative feedback is associated with higher performance ratings. So what does that mean? A lot of you will never want to look at your exams from the fall because it was traumatizing. You were stressed out, maybe you didn't want to see what you did wrong. It was just a not the best experience. Or maybe you did really well and you're like, oh, I don't need to look at them because I obviously did well. In this case, what I'm trying to say is no matter how you did on the spectrum, you should go through these exams and meet with someone to talk about them, to figure out, well, what did I do wrong or what could I do better, so you can always improve yourself. And so these are the 3 steps that I always tell my students who come into me who want to improve. First, you're going to go ahead and self-assess your exam answers from the fall. What did you do well? What could you improve on? After that, you're going to talk to your professor, the professor from fall that actually taught the class, to see if what you assessed was the same as what the professor assessed. And then finally, we're going to adjust and update your study and exam taking skills and strategies based on your self-assessment and your strategies. And this is very similar to what we were talking about in the beginning, where you can gather all the pieces together and then put them together to figure out, well, what can I do? What can I do to improve? And gathering the pieces are all these different exams that you've taken, everything that happened in the fall, so you can put a better plan for study and execution. Now, where do you start? First, you have to actually get your exams. So where do you actually get your exams? And I wish I could tell all of you exactly where to get them. but I can't because I don't specifically work at your school. If you were at Irvine, I would be able to tell you, but the first thing you need to figure out is, well, do they give me hard copies? Is there an online exam database that's released? Do we get e-copies? Does the professor release it on Twin? Do they use Canvas? The whole point is every school is different. And so how do you find out how to get your exams? Usually you're going to ask one of these departments. It's either your registrar department who handles all the exams, your professor who might be just releasing the exams individually. Student services always is a great place to go because they always have a pulse on what's going on. And then, of course, if you have an ASP department, which is usually free, again, it's a totally free resource or it's included in your tuition, you can ask your ASP department to point you in the right direction. Right? But the first thing is to go ahead and get your exam, and hopefully the professor will give you some sort of sample answer or rubric where you can compare your exam. After you have in front of you that rubric or the sample answer, or the professor's memo, whatever they've given you to show you what you should have done, and you have your exam, which is what you actually did, you're going to go ahead and start the self-assessment process. And if you have not done this yet, I highly recommend doing this so you can figure out how to improve before midterms come, if you haven't had midterms, or how you can improve before finals. And so when you self-assess your answer, these are the categories that I want you to look at. Issue spotting, rule statements, analysis, which is also called arguments, conclusions, your organization and time management. We won't have time to go through every single category today, but these are the types of questions you need to ask yourself to figure out how you should improve. 1, did I miss any issues? Did I spot and discuss non-issues, right? Are you actually able to figure out, well, what am I supposed to talk about based on the facts? Did you miss any relevant rules, or did you state the rules incorrectly, right? If you missed a relevant rule, that relates to the issue spotting and your understanding of the law. If you have incorrect rules, what's happening in your note-taking process that is resulting in incorrect rules in your outline? Analysis. Were you too conclusory? That usually means you're not explaining why the facts show the rule is met. Are you using the word because? Are you actually citing from the fact pattern to explain what is going on? And then also, was your analysis incorrect or off base? This means, did you actually understand the doctrine in front of you? And when you were actually discussing the doctrine, did it make sense? Or did it show a fundamental misunderstanding of the law itself? Were you actually concluding? Did you forget to conclude, and were any of your conclusions incorrect? Again, if they're incorrect, it shows you might not understand the law. Or if you forgot to conclude, it's just something you need to add into your IRAC formula or your organization, right? And then a lot of students only focus on IRAC, and they don't realize there's these 2 other categories, which is the organization and time management. The first thing to ask is, well, was your exam hard to follow? This means, was it confusing? When you write an exam in a time setting, are you using headers? Is your grammar suffering? Is it easy to read? Are you using white space? Or are you just having a giant block of text, right? You want to make it very easy for your professor to find all of these points, which is your analysis, the rule statements, the issue spotting. And if you're unsure how to do that, that's where hopefully you have an ASP department that can help you, or you can even just ask your professor or other student mentors how to improve this skill. And then finally, time management. Sometimes people have a hard time finishing, and so the reason why they missed issues, didn't have great analysis, or their organization was off is because they just ran out of time, right? And so you want to figure out, well, where is my weakness? Is it issue spotting? Is it analysis? Is it my time management? Is it everything? Because that will impact what you should be doing this semester to improve. Now, what I do when someone comes in and we look at it and we talk this through after they've met with their professor is we come up with a plan of types of exercises that the person or the student should do. So I encourage you now to work with your school's academic skills program, your professors, or your mentors to do the following. Identify your strengths and weaknesses by figuring out what happened in the fall and why. And then brainstorm study strategies to improve your preparation and exam performance. And this should usually be pretty tailored to you as a person because everyone processes information differently. But to give you an example of what usually happens when you go into your ASP department, I'm going to go ahead and just go through issue spotting really quickly and how some of that problem solving might happen if you were to go with your academic skills program, or even just to give you a way to think of it if you don't have the resources to do it on your own or with other fellow student members. But before we go into the deep issue spotting example, I wanted to reframe this to say, well, why am I talking to you about this when we're supposed to be talking about the bar? This is technically a 1L bar webinar, right? So why am I talking about law school? Well, the skills taught and tested in law school, the issue spotting, rule statements, analysis, everything we just went over in the past chart, they're the same skills that are tested on the bar exam. So if you just remember what we talked about earlier in this presentation, the MEE asks you to, 1, identify legal issues raised by the hypothetical situation, and then separate material which is relevant from that which is not. That's pretty much issue spotting, right? That's what they want you to do on the bar, and that's what they want you to do in law school. So if you're struggling to do it in law school right now, it's likely you will struggle to do it on the bar exam, but you have 2 years now to really refine the skill so we're not dealing with it when it comes to bar prep. They also want you to present reasoned analysis of the relevant issues in a clear, concise, and well-organized composition. That is everything in the chart: your analysis, your rule statements, your organization, and finishing your analysis, which is the time management. So law school, in its own weird way, is preparing you for the bar examination. So you should use all your resources now in law school. Think about it as if you were in sports, you go to practice every single day, like if you're swimming, basketball, whatever, so that you can get to that big game, right? Maybe nationals or whatever. And so here, every exam you have is an opportunity to practice. And you should use the time in between the exams to really refine your skills so that when you take the bar examination, we're not starting from scratch. And then, of course, demonstrating the fundamental legal principles is something that you have to also show, which is the whole understanding of the law that I kept talking about in the last chart. And then if you look at the MPT, it does the same thing. It's pretty much just seeing if you're a competent attorney, which is what law school is testing as well, is do you actually understand what is going on? Can you apply the law? Can you explain your thoughts in an organized manner? And so now that I've reframed it so you can understand why I'm pushing you to really refine your skills in law school, because it will help you on the bar examination, and you are fortunate enough to have 2 years left to really get this done. I'm going to go ahead and give the example for issue spotting, right? So let's pretend that you've done the self-assessment now. You've looked at, his answer or the professor's answer, and you've compared it to your answer. And now you're trying to figure out, well, how do I improve, right? So example, we figured out your weakness was you missed an issue because the issue was missing from your outline, right? We figured out the problem was issue spotting, and we figured out why that happened, which is it's missing from your outline. What you do next is you brainstorm on your own or with the professor, or with your ASP department, or with a friend. What can I do differently to make sure that I never miss an issue from my outline so I will see it on my exam, right? So things you might do is compare your outline with the syllabus, making sure that you have all the issues mentioned on the syllabus in your outline. Making sure you review your reading and lecture notes to identify issues that should be in your outline. So making sure you're not going through things too quickly or missing things. Or even consulting a commercial outline or a 2L or 3L's outline who took the same class and comparing it to your own outline to make sure it's complete. Right? These are some examples of tips that ASP or your professor or whoever you're working with might be able to give you, or you might be able to come up with it on your own. Let's do another one. Here, I spotted the issue when I read the fact pattern, but then I forgot to write about the issue when writing out my full answer. What could you do to improve here? For example, you can actively take notes when reading the fact pattern. That means marking up the fact pattern, highlighting, circling things, making notations, right? If you do that, you'll have it's less likely you'll forget to write about that issue. You can use your notes to create an outline of your exam answer before writing the full answer. This is what we call an exam outline, where you lay out what you wanted to talk about before you dive into the writing. If you just read a fact pattern and then you start writing and you never refer to the fact pattern again or the issues you spotted, it's very likely you will forget some of the issues that you need to talk about within the 3 hours that you're actually doing the exam. And then, of course, you can also cross off each note or each fact after you've actually added it to your outline, so that you know you've covered everything, and your fact pattern should have the whole thing should be crossed off, right? And if you decide to actually make an exam outline, so let's just say I've read the fact pattern, I've made lots of notes in the margins, I've crossed out all my notes in the margins to ensure I put it in an exam outline that's organized, that pretty much shows how I'm going to address my exam answer. When you start writing your actual exam answer, You're going to cross off each item from the outline you created to make sure it actually translated into your exam answer. So you can do all these little things to make sure, hey, I'm not going to actually miss the issue I originally spotted in the fact pattern. And so how long should you take actually making an exam outline and reading the fact pattern and doing the notes? On average, it's about 1/3 to 1/4 of the actual exam time. So if it's a 60-minute exam, you'll take about 15 to 20 minutes doing this process before you actually start typing or writing out your exam. Great. And then finally, we can go through one more example, which is, oh, well, I spotted the issue. I made my exam outline. I crossed everything out, but I ran out of time when writing my full answer. So what should you do? You should, after you outline your answer and create an exam outline, identify what's a major versus a minor issue. A major issue has more facts. It'll take you longer. It's more important. You should probably discuss it. Minor issues are things you should discuss very quickly so you can get to the major issues that will have more points. You might even think about allocating your time accordingly. So seeing, oh, I have these 3 things I need to talk about: offer, acceptance, and consideration. How much time should I spend on each of them? I'll spend 15 minutes on offer because it's a major issue, 5 minutes on acceptance because it's not a major issue, and another 15 minutes on consideration because it's a major issue. And you pre-plan the time out using your exam outline before you actually begin writing. And then, of course, doing practice exams under timed conditions. That will always help you if you're running out of time. Another common thing that people struggle with when it comes to issue spotting is you did not even realize that the issue was in the fact pattern. So you did everything. You finished on time. You made an exam outline. You crossed everything out. You feel like you completed the whole exam, but you realize, oh my gosh, I completely missed an issue. The way to improve this is to just take more practice exam to recognize the common triggering facts, right? You want to find factual themes for each of the issue, which means you look at the specific facts from cases or in-class examples or hypos and turn it into a generalized theme that can help you identify the same issue in new fact patterns. For example, if we were taking criminal law and you had homicide, maybe someone is using a knife in a fact pattern and that triggers, whether they had intent to cause serious bodily harm. It could be a knife, it could be a gun, it could be a hammer. The whole theme, the generalized theme, is some sort of weapon versus a specific fact is the knife or the hammer. And so if you can start identifying those themes, hopefully that will solve this weakness. Another weakness is you just misunderstood the law. And this is where you really need to go to your professor to figure out, well, what's happening in class that's confusing you and what's happening in your outline, and how can you make your rule statements more accurate in your outline. You can also use your outline to take practice exams to make sure you understand how, the rule applies to the fact pattern. So take it open book, right, and review the answer. And so this is the level of detail that I want you to go into when you self-assess your answer with yourself or whoever you're self-assessing it with. Because if you can pinpoint what is causing any problems that you're having in your exams, or what you're doing right and how you can improve, that will do wonders for you in your law school career as well as on the bar exam. Now, the hardest thing about this is not necessarily just self-assessing your answer, but it's getting that feedback from the professor and talking to the professor. And so when you go into office hours, so step number 2 is actually going to talk to your professor. First, doing that self-assessment I just talked about for each of the categories, and then 2, talking to your professor. I want you to really think about it as a partnership. The way you go into this meeting with your professor to review your exams to figure out how to improve is very important because you are the one who will set the tone. And so instead of asking emotionally charged or accusatory questions like, why did you give me a B- on this exam? I don't deserve that, right? Or even a B or an A-, whatever score you got that you're not liking. You should try something like phrasing your question in a way that focuses on your desire to improve. You can still show you're disappointed. I'm disappointed by my final grade, but let them know you would like to learn on what you can do better next time. Show that interest that you want to improve. And then ask them, well, can you help me fix what I did wrong, right? Show me what was wrong and how to do better. If you frame it like that, your professor is more likely to want to help you because it's a partnership, right? It's not them trying to improve you improving yourself, and them aiding you in the improvement process. Again, if you did poorly or you did well, I still encourage you to do this because everyone can improve and figure out what they're doing well so that they can continue that pattern. The other thing you really want to think about, besides the tone you're using or the approach you're using, is the questions you're actually asking. So if you're asking vague questions or making vague statements like, what's wrong with my exam answer? Or I don't really understand what I did wrong, I guarantee you the professor will give you a generic answer back that will not be helpful. A lot of professors aren't sure how to help you improve because they aren't ASP professionals, or maybe they have their own opinions and they didn't read your exam necessarily in detail before you came in. There's lots of reasons why they aren't able to answer what's wrong with my exam answer, right? So it will help you if you ask more targeted questions about the specific skills we discussed earlier and how to improve them. For example, did I miss any issues on this question? Did I state the rule correct here and actually point them to the rule? You said my analysis was conclusory. Can you show me how to explain my reasoning and have them write it out for you? Did I discuss the issues in a logical order? What should I do differently? Kind of trying to figure out if your organization was the issue. But the point being is those questions that we had in the self-assessment chart earlier, you should ask those professors those specific questions to really get the feedback to figure out, well, what is my weakness and what is my strength? So I know how to focus my energy in the right direction over the next semester and 2 years to make sure the bar exam is not an obstacle for me, right? So far we've done 1, self-assess our answer after getting our exam from whoever has it at my law school. 2, talk to my professor and got tons of feedback on how I can improve, what I did wrong, what I did well. The third step now is, well, now we need to update our study and exam taking skills and strategies. We actually have to now take a step back, look at all the feedback we've gotten from ourselves and other people and figure out, well, what do I do now differently, right? You want to really focus on, 1, did you do better in certain subjects or in certain types of exams and why? And so this is very subject specific. Were you better at theoretical exams, like maybe constitutional law? Were you better at more elemental exams, like torts? What kind of was better for you? Did you do better on closed book exams, open book exams, take-home exams? What are your strengths and weaknesses, and how can you adjust? If you were better at take-home exams, then we know, well, memorization is something we should really focus on, or maybe speed. If you're better at more theoretical exams and you're taking an exam, you're taking a class this year that's more elemental, then maybe you should be going to office hours more often, right? So looking at the array of feedback you got and trying to draw those connections. Students often ask me, how many professors should I meet with? How many exams should I review? Ideally, you should review all of them, right? That's the best case scenario. But if you can't get a hold of your professor or you can't get your exam for every single exam answer, you could do at least one you did poorly in and one you did well in, so you can sort of see the difference. But you should do at least 2 so you can compare them. The other thing you want to look at is, what is the most common feedback I received from professors? Maybe you did 2 or 3 exam reviews with your professors and everyone said your analysis was off. If that's the case, then you know analysis is your problem. Maybe they all said your organization was confusing. You know now organization is your problem, and you can do exercises on your own or with your ASP department to figure out how to improve that skill. You also want to think through, well, what were the causes for my performance, just like we did in the issue spotting example. Why was issue spotting a problem for me? Was it because I missed it? Was it because I just didn't even know that it was supposed to be an issue because my outline's not correct? Was it I spotted it, but I just forgot to talk about it? What was causing it so you can readjust and not make that mistake again? And then, of course, how are you going to change your approaches to learning and preparation? I'm going to put a hold on that because I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, as well as, where will you get help to improve? But these are 2 big things that a lot of students really struggle to kind of capitalize on in their school. And before we actually go into those, I wanted to just take a moment to talk a little bit about the time management. Because what I've done here is I've given you a lot to do, which is to now go self-assess your answer if you haven't done it yet, meet with your professors to get feedback, and then of course now you have to change all your performance, meet with your ASP department. It could seem a little overwhelming. And so the first thing that I want to remind students is going to law school is like a full-time job. On average, you have 2 hours of reading per 1 hour of class time. That's actually what's mandated sort of by the ABA. This means you have 6 hours a week of reading for a 3-unit class. That's 30 hours a week reading for classes if you have 15 units. right? That's 30 hours of you just reading and attending class. In addition to that, if you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you'll be doing 10 hours a week of outlining, completing exams, attending office hours, and participating in study groups. That's 40 hours a week, right? That's a full-time job, and you haven't even filtered in other things that you might need to do, or if it takes you a little bit more time to outline or go to office hours or prep time. So for some people, it's more than a full-time job, right? And I want to recognize that if you are doing less than the 40 hours or full-time job, then you can actually pump it up a little bit more to find time to do some of these extra things that I'm suggesting you should do. With that being said, making sure you take care of your mental health is also very important, but understanding that it's not necessarily like undergrad where you attend class and you don't do reading and maybe you're only spending 20 to 25 hours a week doing outside work. Law school is intense, and that's the way that the system is, and hopefully this will give you some tools to allocate your time properly. And so when you actually now need to start thinking about, well, I have all this feedback and I want to improve and change my study strategy, you want to think about, well, when I'm preparing for my exams and I have this limited time, really focus on what you need to do on the final exam, which is 1, recall and regurgitate the law. So you need to know the law. You need to apply it to a different set of facts, and of course, effectively communicate your analysis. As I just showed on the previous slide, all the reading you're doing, all the 30 hours that is taking up most of your time is reading the cases, statutes, and restatement, so all the readings assigned, attending class and asking the professors about questions about the cases you're reading in class, and then of course answering the professor's questions about the different sets of facts, those hypos that the professor's talking about in class. So the majority of the time you're probably spending right now is in class and in the reading, which is those 30 hours. And then now you need to figure out, well, if I did all this, and I still didn't perform as great as I wanted to perform on the exam, what can I add in the middle, knowing that law school is at least a full-time job, if not more, to help me prepare for the final, right? What can I put in this yellow section here to help me improve? And this is where your study strategy should change. And so what I want you to do is reflect upon your study strategies over the course of the last semester and identify what worked and what didn't work and why. And these are all the categories you can look at. And again, I'm just giving you a surface level kind of talk about how you should improve your study strategies or how you can analyze them. But I'm really hoping you have an ASP department or great professors and mentors at your school who can break each one of these down with you in a one-on-one meeting. But basic things, is reading taking you a long time? How can you speed up the reading? Maybe you can use a supplement. Maybe you can, use someone's notes, or maybe you're reading at times where you're too tired to digest the information, right? Note taking. Are you taking notes by hand? Did that work? Should you take it by computer? Did that work? What is the best way to take it? What method are you taking? Are you taking clear notes? Are you synthesizing the notes after? What's happening in the note-taking stage that maybe that's where the outline is becoming incomplete, or that's where the confusion begins? Are you paying attention in class? Or do you just do the reading and then attend class and zone out? You really want to figure out, well, am I engaged with the professor? What's the professor's teaching style? If I'm not engaged with the professor, what can I do to kind of figure out the information? Should I look at a supplement? Should I work with other students? Should I go to office hours more? There's lots of solutions you can brainstorm to solve a problem if you're not paying attention in class, or maybe you're paying attention and it's not even working. Did you make your own outline? A lot of students who don't do as well in their first semester, I realized they didn't make their own outline, or they weren't spending enough time outside of those reading cases, going to class, outlining and synthesizing their notes, right? And so here, if you're not making your own outline, I highly encourage you to figure out how to make your own outline, because it really helps you figure out the information and get familiar with it. The other common thing that I see students did not do when they didn't perform well was they didn't do practice exams, right? So they spent the 30 hours just going to class and they didn't put any extra time outside doing the outlining or doing practice exams to actually implement these skills that they need to succeed on their final exam. And if you do practice exams, you can self-assess each of these practice exams with your professor the same way you self-assessed your final exams, but you can do that this semester with your current professor to figure out what you can improve on now in the spring, rather than waiting until you do your final. And then of course, we've been talking about study groups, and here, maybe think about joining a study group to do practice exams, or to do outlining, or to just talk through the reading or note-taking to help your understanding. Now, study groups required? No, there are a lot of people that find study groups don't work for them because they're more of solo studiers. But if you've never tried it, it's definitely something to think about. Once you find it's unproductive, or it's not really your thing, or it's causing you more anxiety, you can always not join a study group and just use them for more emotional support rather than academic support, or figure out kind of what works for you. And of course, the last two, the time management and using available resources. For the time management, remembering again that law school is more than a full-time job, and putting a schedule together that will really help you break down your day. And this is something that's very individual, that I would advise you to either talk to me or talk to someone in your academic skills department to figure out how to make a calendar. And then using your available resources, which is the slide we had very in the beginning, with professors, CLEO, student mentors, community groups, all the people around you, your ASP department, to help you figure out what you can improve on. And so if I had to fill in this yellow part with the main things that I think you should do to help prepare for your exams, in addition to reading and going to class, it would be to synthesize your notes and outline them, right? So summarize your notes, create an outline. 2, take more practice exams. If you're not taking practice exams before your final exam, this is a real disservice to yourself. You should be taking as many practice exams as you can on a weekly basis if possible. And then after you take those practice exams, go to office hours and ask the professor questions. Ask the professor questions about the exam you took. Bring in the exam. Bring in your answer to the exam and go through it with the professor, right? Taking practice exams will help expose what you don't understand, and then it'll give you something to talk to them about. And then, of course, if you have an ASP department, work with your ASP department. Now, a lot of people, I give them this advice: do your own outline, create your own notes, take practice exams, work with ASP, attend office hours. And a lot of people say, well, where do I even get these practice exams that are so important that you want me to do? And so these are the resources that are available to you. Your law school will usually have an exam database. That's something I would ask your registrar or the student services department, where you can access past exams from your professor or other professors with sample answers that you can now use as practice. The other source you can use is your state bar's website. Most state bars have past essay exams posted there with sample answers for all the subjects tested on your bar exam that you are likely taking during your 1L year. So you should definitely use them, and they're usually a free resource. I know California has, I think, the last 6 or 7 years of past California bar exams, and each year has 5 to 6 questions that you can do. Okay. The other thing you could use is Quimby. So CLEO has actually arranged a partnership with Quimby where we would give you access for $300 for all 3 years you're in law school. And it's originally almost a $1,500 value that we've been able to get at a lower price. And so Quimby has lots of little hypos for you. It has commercial outlines. It has even videos sometimes that you can watch and learn from if one of your issues is the substantive problems, right? Based on your self-assessment and meeting with the professor. The other thing you can use is the Perfect Practice Exam. And this is actually a book that I wrote a couple years ago because I was a low-income student where I couldn't afford to buy all these supplements. $300 was too expensive for me. I didn't have $300, but I still wanted to do practice exams. And the State Bar's website wasn't full enough for me. I'd done all the questions. I wanted more, but I couldn't afford supplements. And then my law school didn't have an exam database. So there was a lot of obstacles in my way where money was getting in the way. And so what I did is after I graduated law school and entered academia, I wrote a book that has all of the 6 subjects that you usually take in law school in one book. It's about like $30 or so, but it has practice questions for all the different subjects that you can get in one book rather than having to buy multiple supplements. So for example, E&E, it's a great resource. There's lots of short answer questions. It gives you explanations. It really helps you understand the law. But if you're struggling in all your classes, you have to purchase an E&E for every single subject. And sometimes that can be very overwhelming when finances are an issue. But if you want, E&E is a great option if you have the funds to really get those short answer questions and explanations. The other sources you can use is the Q&A, which is great for multiple choice and helping your issue spotting. It's a really great way to do quick questions. I usually have my students doing 5 to 10 twice a week for every subject. And then there's Crunch Time that has commercial outlines. It has multiple choice questions. It has lots of practice questions that you can really access. And then Seagulls, which is also an essay multiple choice question book. All of these range anywhere from, I think, $25 to $50 plus. It's just you have to buy one for each one. So that's usually where I say, hey, if you really want to, Mpre will be there for your 3 years. It's about $100 for each year. CLEO set up this great offer for everyone. Definitely capitalize on that. Or even, you know, have the book that I wrote, which I'm happy to talk to any of you about, or any of the resources. Honestly, whatever your finances can support is what I think is good. If not, go for all the free stuff. That will work. But if you want, just email me and we can talk through each of these supplements and what might work best for you based on what your weaknesses are, whether it was issue spotting, analysis, organization. Each of these resources help with different sort of things, right? And so this is where I'm going to go ahead and stop. I've given you a lot of information, but we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And there's my email on the bottom. Again, I can talk through more some of the things I talked about very quickly here on the slideshow in more detail if you have questions. But I wanted to open it up for questions for all the panelists if you have any questions about any of the parts that we've talked about. Let's go ahead and put it through the chat. So let me stop my screen share and turn on the cameras again. So let's see, if you have any questions, go ahead and just put it in the chat and then I'll refer that to our other panelists. And if we have, let's see, let's just give them a moment to see if they have questions. All right. So it looks like we don't have any questions. So if we don't have any questions, I wanted to say thank you for joining us today. If you're watching this video recording, which means you're not watching this live, feel free to reach out to me to kind of talk it through more, like I said, especially at the end. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Do you have anything to add, my fellow panelists?
No, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if they want to forward them to me as well about the bar exam. Happy to do that.
Oh, you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Absolutely, yes. Contact me anytime with questions. I'm really excited for you. I still remember my 1 year of law school.
So thank you so much. If we have no more questions, then thanks for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to working with all of you, and we'll go ahead and release the video, which will have the PowerPoints as well in the video itself. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good luck. Bye-bye.